the Medical AI Podcast.
Hello, I'm Dr. Felix Beacher, and this is the Medical AI Podcast, a 30-minute thrill ride of big ideas. We talk to a range of top guests, from industry innovators to scientists to philosophers. This is brought to you by Omdia and Informatech, where I'm the head of healthcare technology. When people discuss medical AI, they are almost always thinking about software. But AI software does not run on magic, it runs on hardware. And here is a very much neglected question. What is the perspective of hardware developers on medical AI? What are the challenges? What are the growth areas? What are the major issues that they face? And joining me to discuss this is Sub Bhattacharya, Head of Healthcare and Sciences at the computer components giant AMD. Sub, a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you, Felix.
Okay, so Sub, why don't you introduce yourself and explain a little about your team?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you very much for having me on your episode today.
It's a pleasure.
I am the worldwide market lead for healthcare, medical devices, and life sciences at AMD. So our team here is responsible, to grow our presence in this space, and we support our medical system customers by developing and evangelizing, innovations and solutions for the future. Just to give you an example, we just recently at CES 2023, our CEO, Dr. Lisa Su, actually, is part of her keynote presentation, talked quite a bit about healthcare, but one of the things was we introduced the medical imaging libraries. This is actually an innovation we created, worked with a very highly rated ultrasound scientist for the last couple of years, and these libraries are really meant to create like the next generation of ultrasound beamformer running on one of our hardware platforms. So that's the type of thing we do. Of course, we also work with our sales organization to help them, in their accounts and everything, but it's really all about our customers and trying to, innovate and create solutions that can help them develop in different applications.
Okay, now many people, I suspect, might be thinking that AMD is a manufacturer of computer processors, graphics cards, and so on. So how and why is it involved in healthcare itself?
I'm very glad you asked this question, Felix, because it's something we definitely, when we, part of our job is also to, we do contributor articles on thought leadership and stuff like that. And a lot of times people ask me the same question, general people, it's like AMD and healthcare. So this is a good opportunity to, AMD is most well known for its processors and graphics and PCs, servers, data centers, and gaming. I'm sure many people know that. So today, our healthcare related presence, they're mostly on what's called the embedded system side, which uses what we call the adaptive system on chips, or I will sometimes keep referring as adaptive SoCs. Also includes our field programmable portion of the hardware. So basically, it has evolved from field programmable into more processor plus this kind of hardware in one single chip, which is like a processor, but it has a lot more heterogeneous architecture on it. So we serve as the brain behind many diagnostic imaging equipment, which acquires, like signal data, which does beamformation in ultrasound, which does image processing and image reconstruction in large scanners like CT scanners, MR machines. We also do we're in surgical as well, not just diagnostic. That includes, in surgical robotics, we do robotic control. We do visualization systems for surgeons. We're also, believe it or not, we're also in handheld devices like handheld ultrasound or portable x-rays or desktop ultrasound with our more power efficient SoCs or system on chips that I mentioned earlier. By the way, that is not just that's it, because there are examples like, for example, when you're at the airport, right, Felix, and you see on the walls these defibrillators that can save lives. We're in more than the half the world's defibrillators. We're in, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you have never been in one, but anybody who has been in an ambulance can see like a monitor defibrillator in there that they use. We're in those. We're in bedside patient monitors. We're in nursing station patient monitors. But if you look at all basically like things like medical PCs, if you go to basically any hospital equipment, ultimately the big system is connected to a workstation or a PC. So AMD processors can be in a medical PC. Some of the rendering display, rendering the visualization for images or for sensor outputs, they are also possibly using AMD graphics cards. So we can say we're pretty much an end-to-end solution provider in healthcare systems.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, one of the things, of course, I should mention is that, we do accelerate medical AI, which is the topic today. And so we are in that as well, that uses machine learning or deep learning in many of these devices.
Yeah. Okay. Look, you've mentioned quite a few wonderful examples of medical AI. Let's take one in particular, which is one of my favorite examples personally, and that is handheld ultrasound. Mm-hmm. Now, handheld ultrasound is it's a very impressive kind of technology, because essentially what you've got is the ability to perform machine learning type, to the ability to run machine learning diagnostics, etc., or other kinds of systems on a device that's very small, right? That something can fit in your pocket, and also has an ultrasound probe in as well. So there's an awful lot of technology built into a very small device. Yep. So my question is, how far does your hardware in that kind of device have to be specialized for that particular purpose?
So, I mean, we ultimately build system on chips, which does go into many different applications, right? So effectively, what has happened over the years is that there's been a convergence in the semiconductor or the chip market. You can say, like, there are people who make ASICs. There are people who make what's called ASSP devices. Examples are TI or NXP. There are companies like us, which used to be Xilinx before, now AMD, which makes the programmable devices. Now what is happening is people are all building SoCs, and they have different parts to it. They have, for example, the processor in there, right? One or more processors. Then you have potentially hardware accelerators in there. So what happens is, end of the day, when we're doing let's say an ultrasound handheld application, portions of that is targeted using what's called soft IP on a programmable logic. So let's say Philips is building the Lumify, which is their handheld brand, or GE is building the Vscan. If they're using an SoC device, they would actually target their IP on that portion. And then a lot of the general control functions or communications functions will run on the processor. And then on top of that, they would put their software that would be running on the one or more processors and hardware accelerator blocks. So we don't actually build the hardware to target ultrasound specifically, but we basically have a set of features which allows the connectivity, allows the control and communications, and then we provide space to put custom IP on it to accelerate the functions they want to do. For example, in an ultrasound handheld, you have to get the RF data in, then you have to digitize it, then you have to beamform the data, and then you have to render and visualize it. The handheld probes, where I will give you many examples actually going forward as we talk more about these things, we actually have the capability to put one single chip in there and can do all of that in one for a handheld ultrasound probe, which of course fits in there as well as doesn't burn your hand, right? So does that answer your question, Felix?
Yes, and it's always good not to burn your hand, I think. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we talk about some examples where AMD has had successes in medical AI. I think that'd be very interesting to
Sure,
talk about.
and I think first of all, I'm very passionate about this subject, right? And so I'm sure many people are. It's really exciting to be in the AI world. We as a company are talking about AI. AI is definitely a transformational force in healthcare, and that's what I'm seeing happening, delivering huge benefits for the patient, for the healthcare service providers, for the hospitals. From early detection of critical illness, diagnosis to surgical tool guidance, drug discovery, huge possibilities, right? So I'll talk about some examples where we had success, what we're working on, what applications, can benefit from us, and also touch on some of the challenges that I see. And so I'm going to start with an interesting story, and it reminded me of the story because you brought up one of your favorite subjects, handheld ultrasound. So a couple of months back, I was at RSNA, the 108th meeting, which is the largest radiology show in the world. Happens in Chicago every year after Thanksgiving, right around early December. And it is, the place is full of radiologists, it's full of, medical imaging, diagnostic equipment maker. You get the latest and greatest in medical imaging technology over there at RSNA every year. So we actually had an exhibit, and we showcased some of our healthcare AI-based demos over there, and we also had our medical ultrasound demonstration over there. So we met several of our customers, and one of our customers from Northwest Canada, Clarius, they actually make handheld ultrasound probes, and they have very innovative and very progressive technology. Their probes are getting used for cardiac imaging and for abdominal, small parts, OBGYN, name it. And so you see the different handhelds of different shapes in the front and everything, right? So there were several of the Clarius folks who were over there, and who we were talking at our booth, and one of them was founder, one of their VP of engineering was there, and he was carrying one of this handheld with him, and I told him that, oh, he said, well, this is the latest and greatest using one of your Zinc UltraScale Plus MPSoC products, and we're very excited about it because it's doing so many things. I said, so why are you carrying it around? He said, well, I can show you a live demo. I'm showing this to people as I'm walking around. I said, how do you do that? It's like, okay, so basically we didn't have gel, so we, during COVID times we always have the hand sanitizer. So he put a little hand sanitizer on his forearm, and he started scanning his forearm, and he was actually showing the data being wirelessly transferred to his mobile phone on the iPhone, and it was coming up with certain amount of results and everything, and it was actually giving a little bit of, not diagnosis, but basically what a sonographer does. And I was amazed looking at how fast it was, how quickly it was produced results. So I said, you know what, I'm always concerned about my heart health and everything. What can you do for me? He said, okay, I can scan your carotid artery. Right. And he scanned my carotid artery, and he showed me that. And then the results came out, and he basically said that this device is on the fly using AI inference, and is telling him that my carotid is completely clean. And he said, my next generation AI would be smart enough to tell you that you have a you have a health like a 20-year-old because your carotid is so clean. I said, wow, that is so cool. I mean, this was all done locally on the probe. Right, so it's doing the full image processing, beamforming, and 3D images, and then parsing the data, and then coming out with a result, and basically giving a result like a sonographer would read as a diagnosis. So it was pretty cool. So that's like one of the applications is AI handheld local inferencing without using any cloud features, all done on the handheld, and it was using our product, so we were very proud of it. So.
Now, AMD is obviously like a huge company. Now, how competitive is this kind of market?
Well, it is, just like any market, obviously very competitive. But we have definitely a very strong hold around, overall medical imaging. Ultrasound is actually our number one, you can say moneymaker, revenue producer within the healthcare space, actually. And majority of that is coming from the cart-based ultrasound that you see rolled around in hospitals, the big
Yeah.
one, premium, beautiful, fancy imaging, or you go do an ultrasound, they'll do all that. Like so that. But the basically what has happened is the last 10 years ago, the analysts projected that the handheld and the desktop portion would grow much faster than what it did. And one of the reasons is because handhelds still is a little bit limited from the cost perspective. People are trying to bring down the price on those. And I think it is at a point where it's going to start growing at 20%, 25% a year. We have a significant presence in all of that. Definitely, we're like market leaders.
Well, that's fascinating.
By the way, talking of, if I can talk about one more application with ultrasound, but it's a very different. So this is one of our customers, and I can't name them here today, but they are located in Seattle. Now they also have different types of handheld ultrasound machines, but for very interesting and niche application. They do volumetric measurements. So instead of doing the imaging, they actually do things like kidney bladder volume measurement. Now, why is this so cool? So basically, and then again, it works the same way. It basically sends like a report out over Wi-Fi or over a USB cable onto some kind of a static monitor. So it's used in clinical settings, right? So this thing, what it does, it basically, if you think like before these products were out there, they were actually doing these volumetric measurements using ultrasound, then taking the results and doing all the calculations. So effectively, people would take hours and hours before they could get results from these scans. Now, if this particular set of products they're using is using AI to do all that calculation that was done manually before. And now a nurse can walk around the hospital beds, scan it, leave the scanner there, and the AI will produce and give them the results within minutes. It's amazing. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
okay, so what do you see as the biggest challenges from the perspective of a hardware manufacturer? What are the biggest challenges you see to the implementation of medical AI in general?
So I think from the hardware perspective, there is actually two portions of it, right? So one is that we do what's called the training. So the training typically is done, in using very, very large amount of data. I mean, effectively, the bigger the data set, the more proportionally the accuracy goes up.
Yeah.
And also the data set needs to be curated, cleaned, labeled, and so on, right? So this training is usually done in either like a cloud infrastructure environment or in a high performance computing or HPC environment using GPUs. So it really, you need a lot of data to really come up with a good model. And in order to process a lot of data, you need a lot of processing power, and it takes a long, long time. So that's actually a major challenge. So obviously, as things are progressing in the computing land, as resources are becoming more dense and more, higher performance per unit, yes, it's improving, but it is still a challenge. I would say, like, if you look at some of the most enticing areas where this is being worked on, like drug discovery and vaccine, validation work and things like that, it is taking literally months to train a model to go out. So that is one challenge from the hardware perspective. The other one is when you have the model trained, now you're going to use that to infer results, which is inferencing, and which is where the portion that we focus on today on the embedded systems, that's where AI is mostly used, right? It's for inferencing. So for that, you really need very complicated, heterogeneous, and adaptive compute resources. When I say heterogeneous, which means an ideal mix of hardware and software, where you could run different things in different pieces, and how you partition it is very difficult. So you're really targeting to address some problems like you have to be able to capture, process, analyze, evaluate, display all the data, and all in real time, and process your AI algorithms, which are pretty complex, all at the same time, right? So you have this huge data throughput requirement. You have to be low latency and deterministic, right? So the low latency has to be repeatable. And then you have to quickly bring up the images. And then when it comes to power consumption, if it's a handheld, of course, you don't want to heat it up, or battery life shouldn't be wasted. But even if it's a bigger device, power consumption is becoming a problem for everybody because of Energy Star requirements, because of, I've heard directly from doctors about patient comfort. People don't like to be in a small room and hear this loud fan noise going for a big machine that's trying to scan it. So those are really big challenges. And so we're all trying to solve them by building this heterogeneous architecture that can take this kind of algorithms and produce results and at the same time being able to do all those tasks, not just AI, because you have to do image processing, you have to do image reconstruction, you have to, for imaging. So from the hardware perspective, those are the challenges. But I would also like to add that, we definitely the algorithmic development that's happening, and again, that is up to a lot of the software vendors, a lot of the scientists. But what I'm finding also is there is a real need to fund more university research, more training programs, more startup incubators, even government programs that needs to drive it. And I'm seeing some governments actually have started formal programs where they're pumping in money to do that because they understand the huge benefit of AI and how this can really, really be leveraged in healthcare in so many areas, right? And the other thing that I mentioned earlier is that you do need these large data sets, but they need to be curated and labeled, and they're not readily available for research. It's not easy to access one. And I have had customers, very large medical, one of the largest medical equipment makers in the world. They told me that they're creating expensive and time-consuming artificial data sets to do their AI research. That's not good. Yeah. And the problem is that accessibility of data, right? Because you have HIPAA in the US, there's privacy issues and stuff, so they can't just make it available. So it has to be done in separate ways. So it is very challenging. I think all these problems need to be solved definitely to accelerate the growth of AI.
Okay, now you have a great perspective on the field in general because you work with all sorts of different people in medical AI. So for you personally, what do you think the most interesting trends are in medical AI?
Well, the pandemic, COVID, pretty much changed the world, right? Last couple of years. So one of the things that showed us is that there is a big need now, all of a sudden, to develop, validate, release drugs and vaccines much faster than we usually used to do. Used to be an average life cycle 3 to 4 years before you could get them. Even the regulators used to take about a year. And then we had this massive surge in we had Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca. They all came out with vaccines and people couldn't believe it when we started getting vaccinated within a year. So I think people now understand that to save humanity from a crisis, an extensive investment will be happening in the pharmaceutical space for the use of AI. So that's a big trend I see. This is along with things like quantum computing also, for rapid drug discovery, drug development. Yeah. Also feel that increasing use of AI in medical is in conjunction with the development of robotics. That's going to happen. So you're going to start seeing some merging of use of AI with robotics together. And that's for specialty surgical, definitely, also for clinical applications. But, one thing I've mentioned here is that the most effective AI-based systems will not replace healthcare professionals, not in the near future, not in my lifetime probably, but rather to help them make better decisions faster and more accurate. That's really key. So we're seeing applications like identifying regions of interest on a scanned image to alert the radiologist or the specialist, right? Where to focus. We're seeing surgeons guiding surgical tools to the surgery to prevent the surgeon to accidentally nick a nearby blood vessel or an organ, using AI for that. Assessing, I saw an application, actually somebody's doing this. This is very interesting. I thought that I actually didn't even ever think about such an application. It's let's say you're doing a surgery, right? And you have this visualization system and you're looking at the image, you're controlling the quality of the image, contrast ratio and all that. They're using AI to choose the filters dynamically in real time based on which part of the organ you're traveling through. it's amazing. That's AI is who better than AI can doing that, right?
Yeah.
It's So I think these are the trends to watch out for.
So if you
Yeah.
had to pick out one example of robotic surgery, what one example would you use?
Um, so you mean like a procedural type?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we actually have a huge presence in surgical robotics, and as the grandfather of surgical robotics is Intuitive or the Da Vinci. Everybody talks about the Da Vinci surgery, and we're in pretty much everywhere in the Da Vinci system, right? Starting from the surgeon visualization to all the controls the surgeons use, then the actual robot, the 3-4 arms that are sitting there. So we're all up there. So Da Vinci robots have been, they have been built for over 15 years now, and they have a huge head start. And this is actually, robotic surgery is a very unique area from the regulatory perspective, because each procedure is approved. Everywhere else, a machine is approved to be used or marketed or sold, but here it's not. It's so what the surgical robots like really we're expanding is what's called the general surgery area, right? That's where Da Vinci is famous for. Now, you do have a lot of specialty robotic surgical methods and procedures getting approved and started up. Things like orthopedics is a big area, knee, and now there's going to be really major development around spine, because that is an area where you really need this minimally invasive interventions, and
Yeah.
very, very complicated. So I think if you look at specialty, it'll be mostly orthopedic, primarily spine and knee and some of the joints. And general surgery, to be honest with you, this is an area where there's such a huge amount of market opportunity that all the big guys are going after it. Medtronic, Johnson and Johnson, they're one after another coming out with their robotic systems.
Yeah.
It just takes time to get the approval.
Okay, let me ask you about regulation. Do you interact with regulators at all? Can you describe those kind of interactions if you do?
So actually, we don't directly interact with the regulators. Chip makers, unlike other industries like automotive industrial, we actually don't have to certify our hardware going into medical equipment. So the onus is usually on the medical equipment maker. But what we are doing, just like we as a business unit, as a group that we help our customers, we actually are working around medical safety. We're taking all our experience from space and aerospace and other areas we work on and creating all kinds of reporting and all kinds of designs. Like we sometimes, one example is multiple power domains within our SOCs. And what that means is that, when you create redundancy within medical equipment, you have to have separate power supplies. So we're actually providing that within a chip, for example, or we're providing a lot of extra qualification validation report. And the end result that is happening is our customers, their design verification validation time and process, overall is being cut down because of what we're supplying them. So they actually can, it's such a long process for them to get it to market. They can shave off months because of the efforts we're putting. But directly, we actually don't have to deal with the FDA or with the UK regulators or any of the other ones.
Now, Sub, you are from Calcutta, and there are two things I know about India, right? One is that there is a huge number of people who are working in AI and including medical AI. And the second is that India, of course, is got a lot of poverty, and Calcutta is known, especially, I would say, for having a large underprivileged and under cared for class of people. So my question is, how is the landscape of medical AI in India in particular?
It's kind of a hard question for me because I am, we don't do a whole lot in India at this time. We do have customers, but I feel that whatever technology is getting used right now is, it's coming from the larger players around the world, like the GEs, the Philips and Siemens, and they have their presence in South Asia and India, and they're doing some work around there. There is, as you mentioned, there is a significant amount of technologists here and coders and people doing software. So I would have hopefully expected to have more incubators here, supporting more software startups doing AI. Honestly, I think, more North Asia, Korea, China, maybe Japan areas have a little bit more focus on this type of incubators programs. I would certainly hope that there is more, but at this time, this is more still a play with the large players doing what they do well. Yeah.
Sub, I've got one last question. It is the question I generally end with, and that is, taking the whole field, if you had to pick out one favorite example of medical AI out of everything, nothing to do with AMD, what would that example be?
Well, I mean, I have my own favorite, and that's what I'm going to tell you, right? So what I when you think of the biggest benefits that humanity can get from AI, I think it would be if I can provide early diagnosis of an illness that actually saves lives when detected early, but is fatal when not detected early, right? So you think about it, right? This cannot beat anything, because today that life is getting lost where we can save it through AI. So here's an example, right? If you look at skin cancer, it's there are different types. There's a carcinoma, there's melanoma, and the most aggressive type melanoma, in most cases it can be cured when detected early. There's actually some concrete studies published with the American Cancer Society that shows a 5-year relative survival rate for melanoma is 99% at detection when the spread is localized. That means it's on the skin when you're seeing it. But guess what it drops to? If it spreads, or if it metastasizes to distant organs, which is stage 4, that survival rate drops to 20%. So from 99 to 20%. So think about what we could do with medical AI to help. So, the thing is this, if I can take one more minute, my idea on this is, the traditional methods is like physical exam, blood test, diagnostic imaging, and then very invasive stuff like biopsies, right? And people are generally hesitant, like, I got a lesion, it can't be cancer, forget it, right? So you can use video to capture a visibly affected area, and then running a trained AI algorithm. I mean, you use actually a dermatoscopic camera. I have a hard time pronouncing it always, but yeah. So and then you use a small device, a client device, to infer that results. And basically, it's not that hard. It's just not been done yet, right? The thing is that what is really required is, hey, you have all these normal blisters, you have cysts or nodules, you have other types of carcinoma or whatever, and so you need data on all of these, and they need to be grouped nicely. So the training has to be really, really good. And once that's done, you can just use like if I can say AMD has like the Kriya SOM, right? So we actually were discussing this internally about maybe creating a platform or demo around it. But as a Kriya SOM module, which is a small, tiny module with a chip and memory and everything around it, it can do the whole job of inferring into this device to give you a result and tell you that, hey, this is a suspected melanoma or this is a suspected carcinoma. Now, if I can get with 99% accuracy or with some degree of confidence, I can make small devices costing a couple $100 or maybe $500 and put it into every dermatologist's office. And every time somebody comes in with a complaint of a skin, instead of just assuming it's just an eczema, I'll do a little scan. In a couple of minutes, I'll know if there's a suspicion enough for me to go do a test. So that is my idea of the ideal example that medical AI can't be better than that you can save so many lives that way.
Okay, well, look, Sub, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and very best of luck with AMD. And I hope that your team does great things, and I'm sure that it will do. It's been great having you on.
Thank you so much, Felix, for having me on.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. I'm Felix Beacher. Ping me on LinkedIn for more information on Omdia's services in healthcare technology. See you next time.